want to touch on a couple of topics because I know it's really, really confusing and it's frustrating for the fans, and it's frustrating because the CBA is very, very complicated, and so there's certain things I can talk about or not talk about. But just wanted to talk about our hardships. Obviously, Haley Jones was once connected to our hardships that had gone over and played in Euro. When those two returned, Tierra and Luisa returned, we had to release Haley Jones. Kyla Charles at the time was a hardship from our injuries. Obviously, when we made the trade with Vegas, with Melissa, we can't have a hardship on the roster when you make a trade. So we had to release Kyla Charles to complete that trade with Vegas, and it reset, which is confusing because the two players that had longer injuries, Ty Harris and Maddie Sechrist, didn't stop being injured, but it reset the days that you have to miss in terms of games before you are re-qualified for a hardship. So it reset that. We had to wait 2 games, which was both Phoenix games, before then we were able to get a hardship again. At that point, we had signed our 12th player, which was Haley Jones, obviously, who has previously released from the hardship, and you can't re-sign her to a full regular position on the roster for 10 days. So we signed her the first day possible on the 11th day. That is really important sequencing wise when you're talking hardships, because if you have a hardship and then you want to sign a regular season contract, you have to release hardships. So sequencing is really, really confusing to everybody. But there was a method to our madness, and happy that Haley Jones was able to join us. Obviously needed her because we're so down in numbers, and excited that she's back. So just wanted to explain some hardships that way. The hardships are also confusing around the cut down date. The cut down date is the 13th. That is game day in Indianapolis. For example, if we sign a hardship player for the Indy game and it's the hardship date, their entire salary has to be paid, even if we only save them for 1 game to help us. The good news, as most of you saw today, Arike was in practice today. She is probable for our game in Indy, and it's great to have her back. Also, Dejanay was with us today in non-contact drills. In terms of their injuries, both have made great progress and continue to rehab and work to get back out on the court. Again, we look at Arike probable to give us a 9th player for our Indy game. Therefore, unlikely that we would sign a hardship for the Indy game due to the fact that their salary would be a full salary regardless if they play 1 game or played the rest of the season with us. Their entire salary would be in effect because of the cut down date. So moving forward, when you look at that Vegas game, the game before the All-Star break, again, we will be eligible for a roster hardship because of our long injuries. So we potentially could be signing a person before the Vegas game. Little update on our roster.
And then would that contract be guaranteed then for the rest of the season?
Now contracts after the midway cut down now turn into different type of contracts. Now we can start to do 7-day contracts, as you've seen through the years, and they're 7 days. So more than likely it would be a 7-day contract if we signed an additional player for the Vegas game.
Do you already have a player in mind?
Sure, we always have players in mind, but there's a list of players that you have. If you go into any GM's office, they have hundreds of names on boards if you're ever in GM offices. So we are certainly talking with agents and preparing for that potential opportunity around the last game before the All-Star break.
Can you give us an update?
Do you have any concern with the ability for the team and the roster to continue to gel, even though you have these players going in and out?
Yeah, and it's a good segue, Dorothy. It's like, we've played 15 of our 21 games with 10 players or less. You do the math. What's that math? I wrote it down. That's over 70% of our games we played with 10 or less. It's unfortunate. We played we're approaching 50% of the games with 9 or less. So I really, really want to shout out our players for being able to play shorthanded, a little bit of revolving doors with hardships. I give our coaching staff a lot of credit. We talked here a few weeks ago at the end of the first quarter of games, that first 11 games, not where we wanted to be, a disappointing 1-10 start. In this second quarter with 1 game to go, in the next 11 games, we're currently 5-5. At one stretch in this stretch, we're 5-4 over our last 9. We were 5-2 in a stretch. It's just a huge credit to our players playing through adversity. The next woman mentality, stepping up. I give our coaching staff a staying present and staying steady, knowing that many nights we've walked in undermanned. And lastly, I appreciate that they've made CPC a really tough place to play. 4-0 in our last 4 games at CPC. All 4, if the season ended right now, would be playoff teams. So just a real shout out in this second quarter of games. There's a lot of negativity, and certainly we're not where we would love to be. But what this group, players-wise, coaches-wise, have done this second quarter of games, just really proud of them to keep grinding. And now look forward to getting Enrique back and ultimately Dejanay back. But the unintended consequence for me as a GM with these injuries is our rookies have gotten an opportunity. We started 4 rookies the last few games. That's the first time 4 rookies have started in this league in 25 years. That's 25 years. No team has started 4 rookies, and we were able to beat that Phoenix team at home starting 4 rookies. Obviously didn't have as much success back at Phoenix, but the unintended consequences, giving those rookies a lot of opportunity. You've seen JJ thrive, been in double figures 4 straight games. You've seen Isaiah be in double figures 7 of the last 8 games. We now have 4 true rookies in the top 14 of rookies in scoring in this league. I think Isaiah is the 4th highest scoring drafted rookie from this year's drafted class. So just really pleased. The unintended consequence in an injury-filled season is having these rookies learn by fire. And I think they show you the potential and where we're going to grow in the future as them a part of it. So proud of them that way.
I'm not sure if you can comment on this, but as you look ahead to a new CBA, your experience and your position, is roster expansion a priority? Do you think should be? Yeah,
I can't, I've always advocated for a roster expansion. Obviously can't speak on the new CBA. Certainly I experienced as a GM all those years in Connecticut. We always seem to have a major starter injury. But we were able to absorb one major injury, and we were able to do great things. From Chiney's injury 1 year to JJ opting out in the bubble to an Alyssa Thomas missing in a whole season to Jasmine Thomas missing a whole season. We were able to still be very successful, advance the semis, advance the finals, play for championships when we had one injury. When I moved to LA and had the type of injuries that we're having here, it's really, really hard to absorb. When you think about our recent games, Ty Harris, Maddie Sechrist, and Enrique, and Dejanay out, when you looked at those 4, we would have gone into the season saying those are 4 of our top 7 players in the rotation. It's really hard for any team to absorb that. So again, a lot of grace, a lot of positivity to our coaches and players playing through this. One of the ways maybe this takes, instead of all the nuances that fans and the Twitter world don't understand, all these hardships and the people coming and going, is roster expansion. Maybe that takes away some hardships, but not my place to talk about where the CBA will end up here soon.
You mentioned Enrique and Dejanay's progress. Where are we with Maddie Sechrist at this time?
Yeah, doing really well. As you see, she's form shooting a lot. Obviously still a ways away with her rehab, but ultimately then there'll be a ramp up back to play. But really pleased on where she's at. I think she's ahead of schedule, but we're still weeks away.
We've added 4 more games this year. The league added 4 more games this year. How do you feel about the scheduling and just how everything has kind of shaped out?
Yeah, I think the cadence of games is very difficult, and you got to manage that. But it's great for our league. Obviously, I'd love the footprint to expand, but it's only going to get larger, as we add more teams, and excited about the potential that our calendar could get longer. But it's a priority. It's really hard to practice in this league. A decade ago, my biggest adjustment coming from the collegiate world to coaching in this league is practices duration-wise and intensity-wise are really hard to come by, because you're just trying to get the team ready to play games because of the amount of games that you play in the cadence and the window that we have. So it's really hard to practice in this league, and that's a big adjustment. But I appreciate how they're managing. There's been a lot of questions about Paige being in the top 5 in minutes played. One of the reasons that she was held out of that back-to-back out of precaution, and thought process that way. When you look, we're going to go through a stretch of only 4 games in 16 days. That's about as good of a stretch that you can hope for. We got her 4 days off in a 7-day stretch. She only played 2 games in 9 days. So, we've been very conscious of, trying to manage that. And while a stat sheet may still say what it says, over these 16 days, there's a real plan with only 4 games to really, really use days off, use light practice days, and continue to be smart, not only with Paige, but the entire team.
You mentioned Paige and her minutes. As the season, as you get to the second half of the season, if there comes a point where you're out of contention for a playoff spot, will you start looking at pulling back her minutes, or will you guys keep playing full bore?
Yeah, I think you leave that to the coaching staff. Again, it's not just game nights. It's what did that schedule of practice, what in game, her people that work very closely with her analyze, is she being guarded 94 feet as a point guard and bringing up the ball? Those games, you might have to lower the minutes. When you move her off the ball at times and she doesn't get guarded 94 feet, now maybe you can extend a little minutes. So it's always that balance with multiple guards in this league with their minutes. How are they being guarded? So not only are there plans in mind going into the game, but you're also, as a coach and a training staff, you're analyzing how she's guarding, because that load becomes completely different within games. And so those are always a little bit more, in the moment decisions. And some of that has to do certainly with how they're being defended by opponents.
And you mentioned as a former coach yourself, how have you mentored and encouraged coach in this tough stretch, and coming into the league, being a head coach, having the number 1 pick, having so many new things going on, but then the record not being too well? How have you encouraged him to continue to grow and stay focused?
Obviously we have a great relationship, and so we talk a lot about staying the course. We talk a lot about the discipline that teams need in order to have success, and control what you can control. He can't control the injury bug that we've had. He can't control the hardships that the front office is bringing in and out. Control what you can control, continue to grow, continue to encourage the rookies. He's much more level-headed than I am. I was a very emotional coach, still would be a very emotional coach. And so I give them a lot of credit. There's, while it doesn't always equate in the wins and losses, you can see the bond that this group has. You can see them getting better. And now, hopefully in those moments, it equates to some wins and losses. But there's a very level-headed approach right now behind the scenes in the organization.
This kind of connects to Dorothy's question, but you had mentioned just a lot of chatter online. What do you just make of just some of the criticism that's been going around on Twitter?
One more time?
What do you just make of some of the criticism that's just been going around on Twitter about Chris, about the team, stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't even think Chris is on social media. You understand it. This is the unintended consequence of having more eyes on the game, right? It's really, really exciting, and growth of the game. It's hard. It's hard when you're in a build. It's hard when, eyes a lot of times are on the future or understanding. But the injuries at this group, the players that were going to be in the top 6 or 7 that haven't been able to play, and then us still playing really competitive basketball, winning basketball this second quarter of games, is encouraging. And so, it just comes with the territory. Some of it is they don't understand, and so there's grace given to the fan base, but it's all part of it, and we all understand that. But you also, I will tell you this, this organization understands what we're undergoing and where we're at and what we're doing. So the noise is noise. Where less involved owners, less involved decision makers in organizations, they can let noise affect change. I was affected by that because of the noise. The noise won't affect decisions within this strong organization.
And bouncing off that, most of last year's first-round draft class is on a second coach now already. Do you feel like there is more pressure on coaches now, kind of right away?
Yeah, I think the culture that we're always in is in a win now culture. Obviously, it's really important to build, and everybody wants to be at the top, but you have to be smart about your build. But yeah, we're always going to be in a win now culture for sure. Thank you.